Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So, taking to get some more Super Nintendo emulation news for you guys. That is because a few days ago, at least when I'm recording this, not sure when I'm going to air it, I let you guys know that Mesa now supports the Super FX 3 code that Randy Linden and Linden Run Games use for the re-release of Doom. And in that video, we talked about Star Fox getting Super FX 3 support and basically performing closer to its frame cap of 20 frames per second than it ever has before. And that was work done by SunLitSpace, and they are back with a Star Fox 2 mod that also allows for Super FX 3 compatibility, and that's just straight up amazing, because honestly it's great that limited run games allowed this code out there, and there is a new Messen update that allows for better support of it as well, including saving in this most recent version of the Star Fox 2 ROM hack for Super FX 3 support. So if you did download the Messen build to be able to play Super FX 3 games, go in and make sure you grab the most recent one, or else you're not going to get Star Fox 2 to boot. And before we get too far into the meat of the video, I do need to make a little bit of correction from the first video I talked about. I said that Kandawantu was working on the Super FX 3 patch, and that was actually SunLitSpace. That is my bad. Basically, I was talking to Kandawantu about it, and then my wife and I have been having an issue in our new house. Basically, our bedroom floor turned into a skate ramp because the hardwoods bulged at the middle so high that it's like 9 inches off the floor. So I was downstairs basically trying to sheetrock the basement ceiling to make sure humidity couldn't get in, while also taking a look at and starting to pull up the boards on the floor to try to get them back into place. So trust me, Video Game Esoteric has been a very busy mudding expert this week. Not what I wanted to do, but I was a little underslept, and then just basically transposed the information. So that was SunLitSpace, as is Star Fox 2, and of course the code is coming from Randy Linden. And as we get further into the game here, of course, Star Fox 2 is never going to be running at 60 frames per second without a lot of code changes, because it does have a frame rate cap, and the logic is tied to that, which means that if you went to something like 60 frames per second, you'd end up with a game that was running incorrectly. Now, not every single game does that. Not every game locks its logic to its refresh rate, but a lot of games back in the day did, so that's why you're seeing something like this still be close to 20 frames per second, not 60, but it still feels a hell of a lot smoother. And that really is the thing. Some of the staccato motion in a Star Fox game really is part of its personality, in my opinion. And in the previous video, people talked about the fact that they wanted to see a lot more Super FX 3 games, maybe even new developments utilizing 2D and not just 3D. And I absolutely think that that is a very good idea, and it's what I'd love to see too, because don't forget, Yoshi's Island used the Super FX chip, so it would be fun to see modern developers kind of take on that same formula with a little bit of 3D and a 2D game, but doing a lot more with the 2D portion, maybe a lot more transforms and rotations, and kind of just pushing 2D as far as it could go. Now I totally get it, that is a lot of work to say, hey, you should make a brand new game in 2D utilizing the Super FX 3 chip for Super Nintendo, but honestly, now that it's out there, you know full well developers and ROM hackers are going to be utilizing it for basically anything they can possibly think of. And yes, this could be brought over to something like a flash cart if the flash cart developers want to add it to the firmware and they have space on the chips in there. And yes, it could be brought over to something like Mystery as well. I don't know if it's going to happen and how long it will take, but that is my anticipation, that it isn't just going to be Messen in the future that supports this. It's going to be a lot of different platforms that you're able to enjoy this on. But as we're in the space fight here, this is fast, this is fluid, and honestly, I love the fact that Star Fox 2 even in and of itself exists, because I always dump on Nintendo on the channel for some of the weirdest business practices in gaming, but the fact that the Super Nintendo Mini included a game that was basically finished and never actually released was one of the more fun things I can think of in like the last 10 years or so. And honestly, if you've never played Geographic Seal on the Sharp X68000, Star Fox definitely feels basically like the evolution of that game, and that franchise went on basically to become Jumping Flash on the PlayStation 1. So I've definitely played a lot of games like this, but Star Fox 2 does everything in my opinion right. It is just a bigger, more interesting version of the Star Fox formula, first introduced on the Super Nintendo, and now with Super FX 3 code, it's definitely just running faster. And if you didn't play these games back in the day, well, of course you didn't play it back in the day on Star Fox 2, it didn't exist, but the original Star Fox, you might not have the nostalgia for the game to run at like 12 to 14 frames per second, or even lower, but now with the Super FX 3 code incorporated from SunLitSpace and Randy Linden, you definitely get a better version. Let's listen to a soundtrack sample, and I'll be right back with some more news on this.
Special weapon.
So I am curious, I actually have a fun question to ask you guys. Star Fox or Star Fox 2, which one do you prefer? For me personally, even though I grew up with Star Fox, the sequel is just a bigger, more interesting, and more fun version of the game formula in my opinion. And don't get me wrong, both games are great, so you really don't have a wrong answer on this one. But there's just something about Star Fox 2 that really showed how far Argonaut and Nintendo could push this hardware and this franchise in conjunction, really giving you some awesome 3D on the Super Nintendo. But of course, if you do run this game and you don't have the Super FX 3 code, you're just getting a slower experience, and it definitely is something that benefits from that increased performance. Now, obviously, it's not really doing anything for the visuals. It's still the exact same game. It just has more processing power under the hood now. And people are asking in the previous video if the Super FX 3 is just something like an upclock, because you can do that in emulation, but it also has additional instruction sets and functionality in the code as well. So even if you take something like the Super FX 2 chip and you go ahead and overclock that in emulation, you still don't get the entirety of what the Super FX3 code base and that chip can do. And yes, the chip on the actual Doom cartridge is not something that is a custom ASIC. It is running off an off-the-shelf part, but the code is compatible with Super Nintendo. So basically it's just becoming a chip, kind of the same way that we think about FPGA, outside of the fact that it's not really programmed into logic elements. And I know that gets definitely deep and definitely complicated, and no, I'm not going to get any deeper into it than that. Just to explain that Super FX3 isn't just a faster piece, it also has more functionality, and that's going to benefit developers in the future, because that's really what this is for. Yes, Doom from Limited Run Games was an awesome time and really showed the power of Super FX 3, and yes, Star Fox and Star Fox 2 running faster are awesome, and SunLitSpace did an amazing job on those as well, but it really is for the future, at least in my opinion, because now the code base is out there, and anyone modding games, anyone making new games can utilize that for their own kind of developments. And just think of it this way, power on the Super Nintendo is one of the most constricting things out there, and now if you can increase the performance, you can kind of just dream up bigger games, or you can actually achieve games that maybe had issues running at full speed on a stock Super Nintendo, or even with Super FX 2. And I'm sure coding for the Super FX 3 chip is definitely going to take a deft hand, so it's not like it's going to happen overnight, but any sort of tool set out there that allows for bigger and better developments is going to be awesome, because if you're a painter, you want the biggest palette possible so you can select from those paint colors to make your composition, and if you're a developer working on a Super Nintendo game, you want every single tool and every single last bit of power you can get out of the system, so if you do need to utilize it, is available for you. And I do love the fact that Limited Run Games allowed this code to go out, including the Rumble code as well, so it benefits the entire community. It doesn't just live at Limited Run Games as a code set and a feature they can use in future projects, but no one else can. But one more soundtrack sample, because I particularly love the music in this section of Star Fox 2, and I'll be right back to tell you how to play this one if you want to play it today. I mean, honestly, there's nothing better than a space opera epic with a bunch of anthropomorphic animals acting as the pilot. So if you do want to play this, there are going to be two different links down below. One is going to be to the GitHub page for Messin, and again, you want to grab the most recent build, because even if you had Super FX 3 working for the original Star Fox, it has been updated since then. And the second link is going to be the patch for the game that you legally own and bring to the party yourself. You put those two together, and you're going to be playing Star Fox 2 with Super FX 3 code faster than you've ever played it before, and that is an all-around win. SunLitSpace has done an incredible job bringing this over, and I hope to see more of these things in the future, because there's definitely other games that utilize these Super FX chips that could definitely get better frame rates, but I don't know 100% of each and every one of those is going to happen. People mention Stunt Race FX a lot, and that could definitely use extra frames, but we're just going to have to wait and see how this progresses, because it's basically still week 1 for all of these developments, and I'm sure by this time next year you're going to see a lot more movement on it and a lot more fun projects utilizing this. But definitely check it out. Star Fox 2, in my opinion, is slightly better than the original, and getting it to run faster and be smoother is a win in my book. But short of that, if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below, but we're done. I'm going to keep taking the fight here to the bad guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.